How would you survive being trapped aboard a ship stuck in ice while stalked by a monster? It's a triple threat predicament faced by three captains in new historical horror series The Terror. Based on the novel by Dan Simmons and produced by Ridley Scott, The Terror is a fictionalized account of Captain Sir John Franklin's lost expedition of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, which ventured to the Arctic in 1845 in search of the Northwest Passage before they mysteriously disappeared. It's a fascinating canvas which allows for creative freedom between realism and supernatural horror, as the two crews face starvation, disease, mutiny, cannibalism and mysterious deadly forces in the icy mist. The main trio of historical characters, Sir John Franklin, Francis Crozier and James Fitzjames, are brought to life by an excellent British cast: Ciarán Hinds, Jared Harris and Tobias Menzies, the latter being set to become Prince Philip in the next series of The Crown. Speaking to Metro.co.uk, Harris said, "One of my first questions when I met showrunner David Kajganich was, this doesn't descend into just being a monster story with us screaming in terror and running away? Because you can't sustain that for 10 episodes and it gets kind of boring. There's nothing to act after a while." David said, "No, that's an aspect of it, but really this is a character-driven show. It's a cautionary tale, if you like, about imperialism and the British trying to export a British mentality and way of life into this environment they don't understand. That's an interesting story couched within this supernatural suspense, survival story. Don't be worried if the history is a blank spot." However, Harris was just as clueless on the world of Franklin's expeditions ahead of signing up. "That was the appeal of it," Harris said. "It was a completely fresh story. More and more now when you get a script, it's a remake or a reboot or a sequel. It's like F***me, it's Robin Hood again. This was completely new material and I loved the intelligence of the writing. It's a slow descent into hell. What happens to these people, despite being billed as a horror show on the same channel in the US as The Walking Dead, The Terror is far more restrained and atmospheric. You won't find nasty ghouls lurking beyond the sea at every turn, but a chilling, oppressive atmosphere which chews at your nerves as the expedition's hopes start to wither and crack." Harris was particularly impressed by the subtle writing and the credit it gives to the audience, describing a vivid, brutal scene which was cut from the first episode because it didn't look good. "They've dug the grave and Cornelius Hickey has gone down into it. There's two things that happened there," Harris said. "One is Hickey steals the ring. You don't even know what's happened there, but he finds out later. The second thing is, while he's down there, a polar bear comes and he looks up. He gets terrified by the polar bear, but it's a cub. From the perspective he's in, it looks like this huge polar bear. When he gets out, he's so angry he kills the cub. Then later on in that episode when they're back in the ship, you see a mature polar bear come across this carcass of the baby polar bear and eats it, which introduces the concept of cannibalism." They have very subtle ideas about how they introduce story threads into the whole show without pointing giant fingers at it. The Terror also brilliantly encapsulates the feeling of isolation in painfully bleak circumstances, and while the show was filmed on a set for 5 months with odd spots in Budapest and Croatia, there was still some elements of cabin fever which translated off-screen. Harris said, "You felt the claustrophobia. The deck where they had all the quarters, at some points you had 30 actors, 40 crew members all packed into this tiny space. I mean, people smell after a while. You're doing 6-day weeks, they don't have time to do their laundry. It's hot, it's noisy, you're starting to get irritated. You get the claustrophobia in the sense of the repetition of everything, which the real captains would have felt as well. But how would Harris have survived a treacherous, life-threatening isolation frozen at sea? It seems he'd be most concerned with the food situation. There's certain things I remember reading and going, God, this is disgusting," Harris says. One of the things in Dan Simmons' book is that he's always describing what they're eating. After a while, one of the safest things to eat was this biscuit, but this biscuit would have been infested with weevils, so you were pulling these king maggots out of it. I think the food would have been very difficult, the monotony of it and it's not going got change in your expectation for another 5 years. I think the paranoia would be the most difficult part. One of the aspects they do right into the story, but it was completely imaginative, was the noise. When the ships get stuck in the ice, you just hear them slowly being cracked, the timbers starting to shatter, and it's this constant movement against the ice as the ship is struggling to maintain its soundness. But the noise was constant, hearing stuff pop and break, and at some point there's something significant going to go and we're done for. That, and for Crozier, would be running out of booze. He's got a limited amount of whiskey there. The Terror starts Tuesday, April 24th on AMC UK at 9 p.m. More, Ariana Grande fan relieves horrific Manchester bombing which left her feeling suicidal. More, who is Britain's Got Talent star Holly Booth, who survived the Manchester arena bombing?